Footy's almost back and you can smell the excitement in the air. Every fan, no matter where your team landed last year, you dare to dream a little bit because miracles do happen, and you're reading reports of your favourite players training the house down. They've bulked up and they're looking amazing. But you got to remember, for 17 of the 18 clubs, this year will end in frustration. Usually directed at the men and women in fluoro. So just to remind you that footy is largely a game of frustration, I'm going to show you the worst umpiring decision against your club this century. Let's do this alphabetically. Adelaide. Now, you have had your fair share of absolutely shocking decisions against you, and to your credit, you handled them with grace and aplomb.
Right in front of me!
But the worst one has got to be 2023. That game against Sydney at the Adelaide Oval. Ben Keays kicks the winner. It goes through the big sticks. Everyone goes ballistic for some baffling reason. The goal umpire thinks it's a behind, doesn't call for a review or anything, and you lose by a point, and Adelaide misses out on finals. Absolutely devastating. But considering how you went in finals in 2025, maybe it was a good thing. Brisbane, you are on cloud nine, 2 flags in a row, all the father-son academies, you're getting everyone trading to you. You are about to be everyone's most hated team for a while. But that doesn't mean the umpires don't hate you as well. Remember this game, Blitzarves? I mean, what the hell was that? But there is no way that that is worse than 2023, the dying seconds of the grand final. Danaher puts you up within a kick. Zorko tackles Jack Crisp. Lachie Neale gathers, hand passes it to Zach Bailey. Then it's called advantage. Hurries a kick over his head to a pack, which is never an advantage. And then as punishment, you had front row tickets to the worst thing I can imagine in football, watching Collingwood fans after they've just won a grand final. Carlton, you've had all of your club's pain this century, pretty much. And one of the worst ones was in 2011 when you went over to Perth to play the Eagles in the semi-final. It's a bloody close game, and in the dying seconds, Quinton Lynch takes on a pack and is tackled, but no holding the ball. And then a very young Zach Tui boots it into the square with Darren Glass is holding Andrew Walker. No holding the man. Nah. And you would have played Geelong in the preliminary final, and Carlton was actually one of the few teams that Geelong were afraid of. They held them to just a 2-point win earlier that year. They beat them in 2010. You could have gone on to the grand final in 2011. You probably would have lost to Collingwood, but maybe you wouldn't have. Winning. Collingwood. Did I say that you winning grand finals is the worst thing? I didn't mean it. Yes, I did. However, the worst decision that you've had has been in grand finals. It could be the Dom Sheed one, although I don't really think that's as blatant as Anthony Rocker kicking his 5th goal in 2002, which would have given the Pies the lead and broken Brisbane's spirits. And the most amazing thing about this, not the decision, but the fact that from anecdotal evidence, every Collingwood fan I know was behind the goals at the city end of that grand final. So there was 150,000 people crammed into the Ponsford stand. That's amazing. But yeah, you were robbed. Essendon was actually the hardest one of all 18 clubs to research here because a lot of my best mates are Essendon fans and they are all just so emotionally burned by the past 15 years that even getting them to remember a time they felt anger is hard for them anymore. They have just checked out completely. However, the 2019 Anzac Day game, there was some absolutely baffling calls in this one. The worst decision, I think, against Essendon this century, on the field, I mean. I know you want to talk about Wada. But Jack Crisp, once again, is tackled by Joe Danaher. Everyone stops. Everyone on the field, everyone in the stadium knows it's holding the ball, except that umpire. Collingwood go on to win by 4 points. And I think it was good because Essendon actually felt some rage for a bit before they went back to their spiralling denial of football's existence. Freo, you've had a bit of a rough time since you became a club. The worst one this century, 2020. You're playing Carlton. There's seconds left. Freo are up by 2. Matthew Taberner is pinged for a deliberate out of bounds, which is a bit harsh considering he didn't actually have possession of it. Then Sam Doherty kicks it straight down the full. Looks like Freo's won, but there's a very dodgy downfield decision. Andrew Brayshaw's smother was a bit clumsy and Carlton get a shot at goal after the siren. To his credit, Jack Nune's kick is arguably the best after the siren goal in the history of league football. But we're not talking about Carlton right now. We're talking about Freo. That was ridiculous. Geelong fans, I think you'll agree, this century, so much better than last century. But doesn't mean you don't get bad decisions against you. How's this? Round 19, 2010, an epic match against Collingwood. Shannon Burns is to give the Cats their biggest lead of the game, and this absolute howler. The goal umpire was stood down, and now we have score reviews, but doesn't make it right. Gold Coast fans would have been absolutely fuming in the second last game of last year. All they had to do was defeat Port Adelaide and they would have finally locked in that elusive final spot after 15 years of heartache. Unfortunately, it was Travis Boakes and Ken Hinckley's last game for Port, and the umpires decided to give them a parting gift. Mac Andrew should have got a free kick for this in the dying seconds. Thankfully, though, it didn't cost the Suns that final spot, and we got the greatest moment of the 2025 final series. Greater Western Sydney. Of course, it's going to be in a prelim. You guys have been on the receiving end of some absolute shocking decisions in preliminary finals. No worse than 2023 when you were playing Collingwood. It was a hard match, and afterwards, Luke Hodge said that the umpiring was atrocious and GWS were robbed. He briefly mentioned in his outburst Toby Green not being awarded a too high free kick in the third quarter, and interestingly, this incident is not in any of the highlight reels. Thankfully, there are still some people who actually still use Twitter. So I was able to find this footage. Yeah, that's pretty blatant. Magpies won by a point. Yuck. Hawthorn. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm going to say, hey, Hawthorn get all the free kicks. Hashtag free kick Hawthorn. 2001 preliminary final. Now, some teams get the rub of the green in some matches. In this match, Essendon got not just the rub of the green, they got the full body sweetest massage with a happy ending of the green. The most controversial call was this goal by Scott Lucas, which was clearly marked by Adrian Cox on the line. The goal umpire called it a behind and then was told to change it to a goal by the field umpire. Now, you look at that and you go, the margin was 34 points. But the Hawks clawed their way back and only lost by 9 points. And they probably should have won. And then the umpires all decided that that was horrible and Hawthorn became the umpires' pets for the rest of the century. Melbourne, 2021, your favourite year, also had your worst call. It was about round 10. D's are undefeated. They're going up against the reigning wooden spooners, the Crows. Tex Walker gets the Crows in front by less than a kick, less than a minute to go. The D's surge forward. And Nick Murray, whilst being tackled by Charlie Spargo, handballed it directly over the boundary and it was not called deliberate. I could try and make a point about it, but the commentators absolutely nailed it, and it proves sometimes noises speak louder than words.
What's the call?
North Melbourne. Now, this match is particularly painful. Thankfully, North Melbourne, you have been through so much agony. You have such a high tolerance for pain. Many of you could have a vasectomy with no anaesthetic and cycle home. That said, round 15, 2025. North get up by 54 points against Collingwood. And of course, the Pies came back. In the dying seconds, Dacos soccers off the ground. It's marked by Bailey Scott, but Steele Sidebottom and Beau McCreery are so all over him. They've encroached over the mark. It is clearly 50, but the umpire for some reason calls advantage. It would have been a shot on goal and it would have iced 30 seconds off the clock. But North fans, you know, you probably would have stuffed it up anyway. Port Adelaide, you've had a very rough trot in finals in recent years, none worse than the 2017 elimination final against West Coast. There's 30 seconds left. Jared Pollock tackles Luke Shuey and Shuey does that elbow lift. So it goes up to his neck. The very thing the league said they would crack down on that year. Shuey nails the kick and Port's season is over. They may never tear you apart, but they'll tear your heart apart. Richmond. Hey, nobody does Hulk rage better than Richmond fans. And before 2017, it was so much fun to watch. However, most of the time it was self-imposed and not because of the umpires. Not this one. 2007 Dreamtime match. Matthew Richardson gets pinged for that baffling hands in the back rule that they loved for a few years. But clearly, Richo's hands weren't in his back. Richo goes on to kick what would have been the winning goal and of course gets pinged for a 50-metre penalty. Bombers go on to win by 2 points, and Richmond fans sink a little deeper into the depression that was happening until 2017. St Kilda. Now, this video has been going for a fair few minutes. You've probably had time to think about which one it is. And yes, you're exactly right. Tom Hawkins hit the post in the 2009 Grand Final. You have every right to be angry. Sydney. Now, this is going to be controversial. But the decision that Swans fans hate the most is the 2016 Grand Final. Easton Wood takes out Dan Hannebery below the knee, ending his match and therefore his season. The Swans fans are adamant. For the rest of 2016, everyone got pinged anytime they took someone out below the knee. But I'm a Dogs fan. Of course I'm biased. Easton only has eyes for the ball and he just gets there first. And if that makes you angry, just stick around because you're going to like West Coast one. West Coast, I'm going to say 4 words that you hate. Leo Barry, you star. He took one of the great marks whilst Ashley Sampi was clearly being held. You know Sampi would have scored that goal and you would have got back-to-back premierships. But my favourite thing about it is that Eagles fans are still petty and angry about it 20 years later. Finally, my Bulldogs. Now, of course, I want to say every single decision against us has been the worst one ever, but there is one that stands out particularly. 2009 preliminary final against St Kilda. We start the second half and Revolt just dives, an absolute dive, when Brian Lake does a bit of, standard argy-bargy before the bounce. Revolt gets a shot on goal, scores it, we're suddenly only leading by 1 point. What's worse is Nick Revolt then kicks the winning goal, which is clearly touched by Jared Harbrow. I'm still angry. A little bit less angry after 2016, because at least we've finally won one, St Kilda. So yeah, they're the worst decisions against your club. I'm sure you disagree with me. I'm sure there's one in your brain that you hate even more. Please put it in the comments. Teach me about it. I want to learn. Let's share the rage together. If you're in Melbourne or Adelaide, I am doing stand-up comedy shows at the Adelaide Fringe and Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Please like, subscribe, share this with other friends. All that nonsense that YouTubers say. And good luck to your team in 2026. I probably don't mean it.